Welcome to episode 37 of Cyclops is Waiting For Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod, and I write songs, but today I'm going to talk about a meathead with a ruby.
And I'm JC, and I put together the run of show for Cyclops is Waiting For Me, where I just put insert quick plug, and Rod says stuff like that. Cyclops is Waiting For Me is our weekly podcast series where we are going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, except this week we're recording them out of order because we had a guest. So there are literally 4 episodes that will appear right in the show, but we are recording every one of them out of order, leading up to the release of X-Men 97 coming to Disney Plus in 2023. And for those of you who are wondering how we determine the order of these episodes, we utilize the order that is listed in previously on X-Men, The Making of an Animated Series by lead showrunner Eric Lewald, which is also available for reference on Wikipedia. I need to change how I phrase that.
Yeah.
And at the time of this recording, Disney Plus has finally adjusted the order of the episodes, that they are correct. Who knows if they'll fuck it up in the future? And I'm just going to get it out of the way. We're not sponsored by, affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way. And the more shit we talk, the less likelihood that is going to be. Rod, take it away.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that came out over 27 years ago. There will be some spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Let's get TikTok some love. I want to see those numbers come up higher, so Rod has to keep making those for forever. And of course, make sure you follow us on the favorite podcast services if you just came across this, I don't know, on YouTube or something like that. Finally, we record these in batches. It's a shit show. We're not reacting to current news. Rod, let's get into the episode.
Yeah, now onto the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 1. Welcome to Season 4. We made it. Titled The Juggernaut Returns. It aired May 6, 1995. Currently sits at a 7.0 star rating on IMDb.
We got to Season 4 before the actual show got to Season 4.
Yeah, we beat it.
So this episode starts out a little different. This is one of the first times, because I usually skip the previously on, which is ironic considering the book we use for reference is called Previously On. But this time I just was not paying attention and I didn't click the button on my Xbox, which I was using to watch. And I realized they added additional footage at the beginning of this, which Rod missed because he didn't watch it either.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was like footage or whatever.
So we see a little bit of the original Juggernaut episode where Storm drops a house on Juggernaut, Rod's favorite because it's just manslaughter. And then we see Juggernaut get thrown across Scotland by Gladiator. And then the new footage is him walking underwater with a green glow. And it's like, okay, that is new because I literally don't remember that existing anywhere in the show because there's no spot where it would have made sense to be added.
Yeah, I usually try to rewatch these episodes a couple times before heading over because, once again, memory of a goldfish. But because of some neighbors raging at night and stuff, I didn't get much sleep. So
you have the worst mutant power, by the way.
Right? Yeah, your power is to forget.
Your mutant name is Fishbowl.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I know that's kind of significant of why he's in the ocean, but I didn't get a chance to go back and watch it. So I'm glad you remembered.
I will say, obviously, my memory is not perfect. And if you watch the HeroClix unboxing, I say a bunch of incorrect shit. At least I was the one editing it. Mm-hmm. So that way, when I was realizing the mistakes I made, I would actually call myself as being wrong in the graphics. Like if you pay attention to the images, like every now and then there's just like wrong, not really, sort of. That's me at least taking the piss out of myself.
Yeah.
But on to the episode itself, Rod.
Yeah. So Season 4, I think, is the longest season I noticed because there's 21 episodes versus the other ones had like 13, 19 or something.
I think we now have to go back and reference the new or the official list because I think it's now Season 3 is officially the longest one.
Okay.
Because it's like 19 episodes in Season 3.
Yeah, well, this one's 21 episodes.
Flips table.
Yeah. Well, I only noticed it because when I was scrolling through the seasons, it was like 13, 18, 19, 20, 21 or whatever. But they're getting like longer up until next season. Like all this to say, we're hitting the era of like we were warning in Season 3 where like things are going to get a little wonky now.
We're in the wonk.
Yeah, this season, everything is just pure chaos. Like I think I vaguely remember watching this episode, but I would not be surprised if it was because I was rewatching it in college or something when, they're like you could find like, pirate them or they were on DVD or something. They weren't on DVD when I was in college, but like something where I was rewatching it later because I don't think I remember this as a kid.
In our 20s, they did come out as a DVD set.
Yeah.
That's the set that I have upstairs, which has made its way to Los Angeles, but not actually been opened since being in Los Angeles.
So we're in for like a long season and also probably confusing one, even just based on what we've recorded today. One of the good things about recording these out of order today is that these specific few episodes don't need to be in an order.
That's true. As long as you're watching this after the Phoenix Saga episodes, everything else is all good.
So we open up with the outside of like a temple of something. Like it's kind of nondescript. And I know from the captions that the character's name is Eugene. This like nerdy guy is screaming, and then we go inside the
Eugene
temple.
Torbit Widerstem, because that's what he calls himself, and he says it in full. I just want to toss out that is named after an animation writer who is also the brother-in-law of Eric Lewald.
I wonder if they made him like look like him too, because he was a very distinct.
I love when you ask me questions that I don't know the answers to.
I phrase that as a non-question. It's like I wonder, because he's another one of those guys that like he looks very specifically like a normal person, if that makes sense. Like he's not stylized in a superhero sort of way, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, yeah, let's use that as a reference. Speaking of references, though, they're in the cave of Cyttorak, or he's in the cave of Cyttorak.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I recognize that name, the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak from Doctor Strange, like from the MCU movies. And he apparently has been digging at the floor of this temple, so good for him, because he doesn't look like he had tools. So he's been digging at the stone floor with his bare hands.
It's like pickaxing or something like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he pulls a tablet out of the floor. He holds the tablet as he's like kind of reading through it. It cuts to Juggernaut, the Juggernaut we know, walking through the ocean.
Which is one of my favorite shots because they're doing it in that first person perspective, which up until this point, I don't think we've seen that used as a animation device here.
Yeah, I don't think so. And it's a very like Doom kind of like the video game or Wolfenstein or something.
I mean, this would have been like right around that same era when those were coming out too.
And we get a very like intentional shot of a cute seal. And then it swims away like a
fish in its mouth. Yep.
And it like swims away. I was going to say flies away. Swims away.
Different kind of seal, right?
Just in time for a shark to show up to get punched by Juggernaut.
Which I loved. He just straight up punches a shark in the face.
And then you see Juggernaut climb onto a bridge and into traffic, stopping traffic, throwing cars off what we assume is Brooklyn Bridge because it's New York and it's a cartoon.
Sorry, quick research. According to the other book that we sometimes reference, which is called X-Men, The Art and Making of the Animated Series, also by Eric and Julia Lewald, acknowledges that Eugene Torbit Widerspan, who I spelled it completely wrong when I wrote it out, they do not acknowledge if he is physically inspired by the look of that person.
Gotcha. So me also, just because for a second before I remembered his name was Cain Marko, I was like, wait, is this the Juggernaut's origin story? No, it's another Juggernaut. So yeah, while he's on the Brooklyn Bridge throwing cars off, he's yelling at Xavier, and he grabs a cab. There's a lot of little snarky dialogue here. I'm assuming that is like kind of like inside jokes.
It's the same writer who did the other Juggernaut episode, which is the way the styles were written, and Eric acknowledges that in the making of. It's just kind of like there's something about these episodes with Juggernaut that they are a little more jokey than a standard episode. So
because like you see the Juggernaut even before he rips the roof off of a cab, he's like carrying a cab down the street, and you pass by a car and somebody's like, sell all our cab stock, like,
yeah. which that dude had the classic 90s cell phone in his hand.
Yeah, the brick.
The brick.
Also that his like life is in danger. He's like, sell my stock.
I mean, you got to have priorities.
Right. And so he rips the roof off the cab and then drives away in it like a go-kart.
Somebody screams at him. They call him a stinking mutant. And they do a very important aspect of making sure to confirm that he is not a mutant. And I think that's like kind of, one of the things where he's getting blamed for being a mutant because he's a powered individual. And it ends up leading to this continued bigotry that mutants are seen. Mm-hmm. Again, in this world, we know that there are characters like Captain America, the Hulk, etc., but the bad ones just by default get identified as being mutant.
Yeah, totally. And also that he's bigoted himself against mutants.
Right.
And
which we see more of later in this episode.
And so he is it's just super important to him that he's not identified as a mutant. It's just
he doesn't care if he's hated. He just does not want to be called a mutant.
So at the X Mansion, Xavier is watching all this news report stuff of Juggernaut attacking the bridge and calls for Beast and
to the war room.
Yeah, to the war room.
And he mentions that they have limited numbers at that point, which I thought was like very specific.
Yeah, it's like, is he? How many people is he?
Like, are they all just like sent off on mission?
That's right. With the people. Yeah. And also, that was like probably like an easy way to be like, oh, how do we explain away all these other people?
Right.
Stuff. Whatever. They're on vacation. I don't know.
But apparently the Juggernaut is driving the most, like, I don't know, best suspensioned cab in all of New York City, because the dude weighs more than everybody else. And he's driving with this thing with the top off, and he crashes through the front gate, and he goes through, and like they have apparently front lawn turrets, which props to them for installing those finally, considering the amount of times the friggin' mansion has been attacked.
Yeah, and even like electrical net.
Yeah, there's like I wrote it as laser fence.
There you go. Yeah. Oh yeah, like Resident Evil or something. But none of it even like
doesn't even slow him down. Right. Completely non-effective. And we realize that there is a concurrent story going on, and that's where Eugene actually finds the ruby, which had been near the tablet, but just buried close by it.
Which sounds like a horrible security measure.
It does. But you got to remember now that we realize that Cain is the one who absorbed the power in the ruby in the first time, he's not a smart dude.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, some of his methods of trying to get Charles's attention, he's not the biggest tactician. That's a little more of like what Black Tom Cassidy does in that relationship.
Yeah.
So at the time, Eugene grabs the ruby. And then, the alert is going out, and we see Storm and Rogue are shopping, so they're close by. Cyclops and Wolverine are on Muir Island, which was a great little, it's not an Easter egg because it's specifically meant to be there, but it's like a little bit of a callback of like, oh, Morph is getting help.
Yeah, he's getting rehabilitated there.
Yeah, so he's there in like a wheelchair and such. Jubilee is just sitting by a pool, and then Gambit is being a good human being and like helping fix the engine of a bus.
Yeah, and he doesn't hear the alert because he's like on a motorcycle or something, so he like has his comm in his jacket put on the motorcycle.
Well, yeah, you do not fix an engine with a big jacket like that, because all you need to do is like lean over, something gets hooked, and then you're decapitated.
Yeah. But I guess that was the way to like write him out of the episode. He's like, okay, he's busy and he didn't hear the call.
Similar to Jubilee with the pool.
Same, yeah.
So apparently Gambit and Jubilee are swimming and fixing buses for 16 hours, but you're here nor there.
Yeah, and then Juggernaut is blowing through the mansion. He breaks into the danger room because he
falls into the danger room.
So he probably doesn't know what it is, but arguably one of the worst places to land in the X Mansion if you're trying to attack it.
Unless you're the Juggernaut.
Yeah, I guess true, yeah. But Xavier meets him in there, so Xavier finds him in there and then activates the danger room and has a bunch of like robot juggernauts.
Yeah, it becomes like a jungle setting at first, right?
Yeah, it becomes a forest jungle thing. A bunch of like robotic juggernauts like fight him.
Right, which we know from the past, because in the past we've had like, Wolverine fight the Sentinel Cyclops and stuff like that, or Cyclops Sentinel. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. It's like this mashup of things.
Yeah, but essentially, as strong as those replicas are, you kind of have to turn up the intensity of the danger room to make it deadly, and it seems like Xavier needs to hype that up a little bit more, because he's literally grabbing these like robotic clones of himself, but just shredding them.
Yeah. He's to the point where like he like activates like a Hulk one.
Yes.
But he also gets swatted away like really fast.
And that one, they switch actually the location. It becomes like a desert location.
Yeah. I guess he's just trying to confuse Juggernaut, or he's just mashing buttons.
Which I don't know if that's a reference to a specific comic issue that happened in the past. Mm-hmm. But I do remember in the original Marvel Universe card series from like early 90s, I remember distinctly there was a card that was famous battles, and one of them was a Hulk versus Juggernaut, but it was so zoomed in, like you wouldn't have seen the location of it.
Yeah,
but that is a fight that has happened in the Marvel comics canon. Yeah. And then he fucks it up.
Yeah. And so then at that point, Beast has come in. He has like electronic gloves or something. He's trying to remove the helmet.
Yeah, trying to replicate what Rogue and Jean had done the last time they fought him.
Yeah, and it doesn't work.
No, it does not.
And back at the temple, Eugene is reading the tablet inscription with the ruby, and at the mansion, Juggernaut has got Xavier in a chokehold, and he's getting ready to like punch him or something.
Well, he's also like totally like fucked up the walls, and there's like a lot of close calls with like ceiling pieces almost falling on him and killing him and such. So it's a pretty dire scenario for Beast and Xavier, because whatever backup they have is not making it there in time.
Yeah. And so Eugene is reading the tablet, and he's nearing the end of the reading, and you see Cain, Juggernaut, like lose power, and he like falls, he drops Xavier and stuff, and then Xavier and Beast get out of the way, but the ceiling and everything caves in on Cain.
Yeah, and it's because we saw the let's call this one of our animated series tropes, like, you know, nobody looks up and sees sentinels and stuff like that. But everything needs to explode through a ceiling, which we get multiple times in this episode. Yeah, the power of Cyttorak shoots from Cain's body through the ceiling and goes off into atmosphere, so to speak.
It's like we're in the X-Mansion. Oh yeah, the roof has to blow up.
Yep. But no skylights were harmed in the making of this episode.
Right. They just gave up on the skylights. He's like, listen, I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah, we're going to stop installing these guys. You don't deserve them.
So Rogue and Storm show up, and Xavier he tells them to rescue, Rogue specifically to rescue Cain, and Rogue's like, no, and Xavier pulls rank.
The first time. Yeah, it's really the first time where he's like, guys, I'm not asking you. This is an order. He's pleading for help, and this is one of those times where it's like, okay, we are actually seeing the X-Men pushing back, but also at the same time, Xavier is just like, I'm not giving you the option here. It's like, if you don't do this, you're out, is essentially what he's implying, kind of thing.
Yeah. And they kind of begrudgingly start just like, moving shit, getting the pieces of the danger room like picked up and stuff. They find him pretty quick. They dig him out, and he's back in like, I guess whatever he was in before he transformed, like his army clothes and stuff.
Yeah, combat fatigues, which also now a little bit gross to think that he had been in the Juggernaut armor the whole time.
Yeah, it that on. But also, like, we'll see this a little bit later, but the Juggernaut armor is part of the mysticism. I was kind of learning stuff about the Juggernaut lore in this episode, and
animated lore, not always full-fledged matching one-to-one to the comics.
And then we cut directly to the med ward where Cain has been, hooked up to all the machines and stuff, and Beast says that he's losing strength. He's still alive now, but he will die if he doesn't get his powers back.
He needs to restore power or he's done. And at the end of the day, Professor X is like, I have to still do it because he is my brother.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which, I don't know. I guess I'm just one of those guys like, I love my brother to death, but if we didn't get along in the first place and he bullied me and he tried to murder everybody I know
multiple times,
I might draw the line there. I might be like, you know what?
Well, it's not even just like trying to murder your friends. Like, he's trying to straight up murder Chuck.
Yeah. So he radios Cyclops or he asks Rogue to radio Cyclops and Wolverine on the Blackbird. And he's like, send them to Cyttorak, go find the new Juggernaut and the Ruby, and
search the ruins. He doesn't specify Cyttorak. And then one important thing that we got out of the book, that wasn't crystal clear in the episode itself, is the temple is in Asia. So that was actually a pretty important aspect of it, because no matter how fast the Blackbird is able to fly, it still has to deal with travel time. So it gives a little bit more impact of like, okay, you're traveling from Scotland to Asia, and then you're going to have to go from Asia back to the mansion. So like, even at supersonic speed, that's not an instant scenario.
Yeah, teleportation.
Which is great, because it's like, oh, they could still get the ruby and such and find the new Juggernaut, but still be too late. So there's still stakes the entire time.
Yeah. And Cyclops, this is one of my favorite little like scenes. So Cyclops and Wolverine are just like, what do you want us to do? And it's just a lot of the way you could predict happening in the situation. Everybody's like confused as why. And he's like, and Cyclops, I think, says something to the effect like, give me one good reason. And I love this scene where you see on the screen, Rogue is like, she just gives the, I don't know, arms, and then she like waves Beast into frame. And the Beast is the only one who's like, listen, it's his brother.
Still got to do it.
We got to do it. It's our boss. It's his brother. We have to do it. And following more like action movie tropes and stuff, Cyclops is like, well, we're gonna do it. It's like, and don't even tell me you don't like it. And Wolverine's like, I don't like it.
So that's when we see Eugene driving back into town in his Jeep, but in full Juggernaut mode.
Yeah, that's where we learn. Like, I guess you get that with the powers and the ruby and stuff.
Which is accurate to the comics, because at one point when there was the Avengers versus X-Men series, and Colossus gets the power of the Juggernaut.
Shit, that's terrifying.
Or it might have been in a different... At one point, he has that power. I don't remember if he got it during AVX or if he got it during Fear itself, but regardless, Colossus with Juggernaut power. So Metal Guy with Juggernaut stuff on top of it.
Jeez, yeah, that's insane. But I love this little detail, and you noticed it too, was that he still has his glasses on underneath the thing. So apparently it augments all your physicality except for your eyesight.
Yep. Still trash eyesight. Dude, this is the days before LASIK. But he also is like you could tell he's going into this for the wrong reasons too, because he's like, the girls are gonna go nuts, and it's like, you have the power of an evil god and you're worried about getting girls right now. Like, set your standards higher, man. Like cool, I'm gonna be rich first. Yeah, like, I'm gonna go rob a bunch of shit.
Yeah, they were heavily leaning into the incel vibes with this with the Eugene character. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but yeah, his
incel wasn't even a term we had back then, Rod.
Yeah. But his you could tell the first thing on his mind is like, this is gonna get me laid. Back at the mansion, like Beast is.
He's just giving an update kind of thing.
He's just like, Kane's still dying, so we still need to get this rupee back.
Just a quick reminder. And I think that was more so just to give us a transition from how Eugene goes from being in his car driving back into town to walking into his apartment. And then in his apartment, it's very much the, you don't know your own strength scenario. And he's just like opening the fridge, and the fridge door falls off. The neighbor is being loud, so he, like, instead of stomping on the floor, he just stomps through the floor. And I'm going to assume he killed that man.
Probably, yeah. There's a lot of homicides in this show that they just don't show you.
Yeah. I would say that one is manslaughter.
Right.
I don't think he dropped down the floor and then murdered the man. I think he fell through the floor and crushed the man. So that is not homicide, sir. If he went through the floor and then ripped the guy in half, homicide.
Yeah, we don't know what happened there, so it was a cutscene. And we get back to the mansion, and Beast suggests to Xavier that probing Kane's mind might be a way to find a way to help him.
Right.
And so Xavier does go into his mind. Another instance of non-consensual, but he's unconscious too. So like.
Well, he goes in, and then Cain pushes back, but I think to an extent he accepts it, because it's like, bring me back to the moments that led up to this.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can't get there unless they have to give you, like, the breadcrumb.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're literally just searching somebody's mind.
Just terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, the life of memories of somebody, it's like, that would take a little bit of time. So I think even though he didn't get invited in, I think Cain kind of, like, gave him a little bit of an indication of where to go. Yeah, and it's a spot of anger, because he literally goes back to, like, when they were meeting as kids, and it was just like, oh, I'm so happy you're my brother. And it's like, no, man, we're going to be stepbrothers. And then he literally knocks him off a horse and is stepping on Xavier's chest.
So Xavier's like reliving the trauma of their childhood. And this is stuff that Xavier does remember.
Well, he remembers parts of it. He remembers his perspective.
Up to a point.
Yeah.
And so the point, that Xavier learns that we get to see is Xavier's stepfather comes and reprimands Cain, and then tells Xavier to go in and get ready for dinner.
Yeah, go kick rocks.
And then he immediately switches character and switches off his, like, nice guy persona. And he's like, he tells Cain, like, don't fuck this up for me. Like, we need this woman's money and stuff. So you find out that Xavier's stepfather only married Xavier's mother for, like, her wealth. And
right, because she had, family money kind of scenario. And he's actually her doctor, which is a massive conflict.
I didn't know that.
That's the implication.
Makes sense now. Yeah, because there's a caretaker there too and everything.
Yeah. So the implication is like, oh, this person is terminal. I'm gonna get in on this, and that way I'm gonna get my money.
Yeah, because because in that same flashback, they're eating dinner when we find out that Kane's going to boarding school, or he tells Xavier he's going to boarding school, and there was a woman that walks up behind him, and for a second I thought that was Xavier's mother, but they talk about like how she's doing fine, and
right, and at that point Xavier's psychic ability is he still not able to use it properly, and they call it one of his headaches, but he's like, well, no, she's not getting better. She's getting worse. And they kind of send him away. And the reaction is like, you're going to blow the whole deal. You're getting out of here from the father to Cain.
And then we're back with Xavier in like the real world. And he realizes that his stepfather just married his mother for the wealth.
Yep. And then Beast calls out the sins of the father, that Cain is still, even though Cain went down the dark path, it's only because of what his father sent him down.
Yeah. So it's like just generational trauma, basically.
Yeah.
And we cut over.
Along with choices. I think, I think we also have to acknowledge, like, he could have taken a different route, but he chose to go down this route that he did. So it's not totally innocent, but it's also not like, he didn't start out as being truly evil.
Yeah. He also wasn't a good person to begin with. Yeah. There was a little both. A little column A, a little column B. And we cut over to Eugene, and he's driving to a club. He's not in the Juggernaut gear. Apparently figured out how to get that stuff off.
Yeah, apparently there's latches or something like that.
he's in like a white tux going to like a disco club.
Yeah, it was very Saturday Night Fever is how I read it, but it was like Saturday Night Fever if John Travolta took so many steroids.
Right. And still decided to wear glasses.
Yes. Well, we've established it doesn't improve your vision.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's as if Hulk Hogan was wearing the outfit for, John Travolta's character from Saturday Night Fever.
And a few feet higher.
Yeah. Or Eugene could have just been really tiny.
That's true. Yeah. And he immediately hits on the first girl in the front of the line.
Who's with a dude, and he just literally chucks the guy.
Yeah.
That guy died. I just want to point, there's no way that guy didn't get like murdered from the impact of being thrown like a rag doll.
Yeah. And he even says like, what's a girl like you doing with a guy with that face or something like with a face like that or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you're just going all in on this douchiness.
The guy did have a little bit of a jacked up face.
And she's not interested.
Nope. Instantly rejects him.
And so he's like, but why don't you like me? And he like rips the front of the building off.
Which I can't see being a way to make friends because you just turned a nightclub into an open air bar and people usually want to go inside to the nightclub.
Yeah. And also like, is that structurally sound?
No. No, God, no.
Right about then, Cyclops and Wolverine show. But Eugene is like kind of unaffected. He still just starts dancing.
Scott, who's the biggest irony to me of anybody giving relationship advice, they're like, come on, man, you don't got to be a big shot. You could just be yourself. And obviously they mean like turn back into you, whoever you were before the Juggernaut power. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you suck at flirting. You have no idea. You didn't know that Dazzler was like coming on to you. You're not allowed to do this.
Yeah, right.
Wolverine has been married like 6 times in his past lives. He's the one I trust to give relationship advice.
Speaking of Dazzler, in this scene, the song that we heard Dazzler sing the first time we met her
during the fight is playing.
Yeah, during the fight is playing. I still cannot find. I can't find the song. There were more lyrics because there's a longer clip of the song. I can't find it. The credits for this episode just say Ron Kanan, music supervisor or whatever. So it's still kind of a mystery because it sounds like a pretty decent song.
So we need to find that Ron.
Yes, actually, the day we're recording, Ron Wasserman is on a panel with Ron Kanan at Morphicon, Power Morphicon,
which is only a few miles from where we were, and we're great. Great job, Rob. So the fight breaks out, and during the course of that fight, the ruby falls out of his possession. And Cyclops and Wolverine do not care that there is a guy who's still powered like the Juggernaut, that they just take the ruby and they like fuck off. And it's like, he could go do a lot of damage if we leave him in this club right now.
I guess they just realized that he was kind of horny, so like, all right, well, he's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, but he's a big powered doofus. Like, that also is still dangerous.
Yeah. Speaking of like how powered he is that while Wolverine and Cyclops are taking off in the jet, Eugene like leaps to grab him. He gets close. He gets within, like he goes pretty far in the air, but he like misses.
Yeah, he does a Hulk jump basically.
Yeah, he does a Hulk jump. He misses and he lands into like a sound stage where they're clearly filming Power Rangers.
Right. So it's Banzai, Banzai, which is obviously the play on like, Bandai and all that. But it is no doubt 2 giant kaiju-sized Power Rangers, and then one looks like a Godzilla, and then one's just kind of like a generic kaiju monster.
And when they look over Eugene's face, a parody of the Power Rangers song plays. It's funny because like now that I've gotten to write a little bit with Ron for this podcast and stuff, I get to see his thinking. He's like, okay, so we'll do the first 2 notes of Power, two or three notes of the Power Rangers song, and then it's going to resolve on a different note. It's going to go up instead of down.
Yeah,
you'll get the idea.
And luckily it was all owned by Saban at the time from a production standpoint, so there's way less chance of somebody being sued.
Yeah, it was just a great little call out and stuff. And now at the time I didn't know it was in Asia. I was like, the funny ironic part is that this wasn't even filmed in the States. And it's like, oh, okay, so that was the joke. It's like they're filming the not Power Rangers. Yeah.
And I think that was like the implication, but it, like I said, formally called out as being in Asia, and that's why there's such a time difference of what we're dealing with here.
Which kind of, we just have to like suspend our disbelief for the time thing for this next part then, because they do arrive kind of in time from leaving Asia to New York.
We go back to more of the mind meld. Cain has returned from boarding school, and Xavier is asking him, well, why didn't you come home to visit for Christmas?
Yeah. And Cain still dislikes him, and then that's the...
Well, because in the flashback, Cain is thinking about his time stuck during Christmas, and Charles accidentally reads his mind, and he's like, oh, I didn't know your dad wouldn't let you come home. And that's when Cain, like, the disdain for Charles just keeps growing, and he realizes that he's reading his mind. And it must have been, like, one of the earliest instances of discovery of mutants, because mutant wasn't a common term at that point.
Yeah.
So it's like very early on that like that bigotry to the different mutants too.
Yeah, and that's when Cain discovers that Xavier's a mutant. And,
Yeah.
and the bullying like intensifies. You see kind of like a supercut of more times where like Cain is calling him mutie.
Yeah, he's calling him a mutie. You know, Charles is saying he was like apologizing. He was too young to control his powers. And then you also get a reference to like, I made sure everybody knew and hated you, especially Sandra.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And that was the first reference to Sandra in the show. So it's not unexpected you should know this, but that is kind of like, okay, well, at the very least, we get the implication that it was some sort of like person that Charles cared about.
Yeah.
And I was going to ruin that relationship for Charles.
Yeah. And so this was like a whole bonus content for Charles where he didn't need to know this, but he found it out anyway, and he's pretty hurt. So when we're back in like the real world, he's taking a beat. He goes outside and Storm is trying to console him, and Xavier I think he's rethinking if he should help Cain or not.
Yeah, he's kind of like, well, he doesn't deserve my sympathy. And it's like, ooh, good thing you just told all your X-Men to save this guy's life, and now you're second guessing it.
It says Cain is nothing but a sadistic bully,
which is accurate.
Yeah. And even though Storm kind of protested before, she kind of tries to like get him to be like a little more logical.
Yeah, I would say Storm was less protesting as much as just trying to feel it out more.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like Rogue, where Rogue was straight up saying no.
Yeah.
Storm was more like, should we talk about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what did she say? Something essentially like that like you don't have to forgive him. You just have to kind of understand where he's coming from a little bit more.
Yeah, you have to understand him.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
You know, like just in life, you don't necessarily have to agree with people, forgive people, whatever, but it'll also help you if you understand where anything came from that you don't understand. So Wolverine and Cyclops have arrived with the ruby at this point, somehow magically from Asia within this night
jet
time, you know, like
Mach 6. I don't know. It's a fast fucking jet, Rod.
Right. And Xavier puts the ruby in Juggernaut's hand. Then he says, I'm going to meet you like in your mind.
Right. So it's very much like what we saw with him in Sabretooth in season 1, where it's a landscape within his mind. So it's not necessarily the astral plane, but it's I'm in here with you and we have form in front of each other. Yeah.
And they kind of have a very brief interaction. Juggernaut's like, this doesn't change anything. And
I'm still going to make your life a living nightmare. Yeah. And what he actually asked him, what are you getting out of it?
He says that, knowing that he saved his brother.
Yeah. He'll have the satisfaction of knowing that he saved Juggernaut's life or Cain's life.
As far as like making his life a living nightmare, he said that would be his burden to carry. You know, my argument to that is like, not only your life, but also several other people and whoever else he kills along the way.
I mean, it's the Batman argument is like, at what point is Batman worse than the Joker? Because the Joker is obviously a force of chaos and killing doesn't bother him. Is it the life of one person to literally save millions?
Yeah.
And it's like Juggernaut is closer to a force of nature than a person at this point.
Yeah. And so Juggernaut apparently is too dumb to separate the ruby and the tablet or hide it, but smart enough to have remembered that
he hid it. He did hide it.
But not like, but
not
together.
well, but yeah, he hid it.
And in the same place he found it.
I didn't say he was smart, but he did hide it.
But he memorized the inscription, I guess, because he immediately just rattles it off.
Which, really quick, during the course of the episode, the language changed. So at one point it's read as whomsoever touches the ruby, and then at a different point it's whosoever possesses the gem.
Yeah, so that was another thing. I don't know if I just made this up or
you did.
I saw it somewhere.
You definitely did.
But I always thought that the Juggernaut had the ruby with him for the most part for keeping his powers.
Don't know enough about Juggernaut lore to confirm or deny that, as much as I know a part of it is essentially like you are submitting a part of yourself to this dark god Cyttorak, and that is why. So it's more the pledge, and the gem acts as a conduit of it. It may be one of those scenarios, like kind of like early Superman was never flying, he was jumping. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of like the writer made whatever they needed to, and it kind of probably got retconned over time.
Yeah.
So
regardless, if I were Juggernaut, I would have taken that ruby, taken that tablet, put them on opposite ends of the universe with locks and keys that only I had.
So you're smarter than the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
But as he goes through and he recites, his mantra, we see that Eugene is now got people cheering for him. They were totally okay with him destroying the front of the club. I don't know. If I'm that bar owner, I probably would have shut down the club when the front facade got ripped off, but
and the guy at the front of the line died from getting thrown.
yeah,
blocks away.
who's splattered against pavement. Literally looks like the kill scene from The Boys with
Any of them?
yes, yeah, literally. I don't even have to say which one, but yes, any of them. God, now I want to see Corridor Digital do the realistic version of the deaths of X-Men the animated series,
Right.
like they did with the Spider-Man Tobey Maguire movies. And he's like holding up women in the air on a table, which to me reminded me of one of those classic pictures from wrestling where Andre the Giant was like standing there and literally has like multiple women up on his shoulders
yeah.
and isn't even like struggling because he was just a giant human being.
Yeah. Yeah, and people cheering for him. He's dancing, and he loses his powers there. I don't think that beam actually destroyed that building like it did the X-Men.
No, it did not. It definitely it diverted through the front opening as opposed to like taking out the ceiling, which was probably not structurally sound at that point.
So that further in my headcanon says to me that there is a house rule at the X Mansion, like you have to break the skylight, you have to break the roof.
I was gonna say, or this building that the club was in obviously did not have a skylight, so it didn't have to target destroying one.
And so he loses his powers. Somehow he survives getting like
The table.
buried under tables and stuff, and he hears someone like calling for help under another table. So he like lifts the table off.
It was the same girl that he was hitting on at the door. Yeah,
in the red dress, and she's like, "Oh, my hero," and she hugs him, and then he faints from being hugged by a woman.
So I actually hated the fact that he kind of got what he wanted by being a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like that was the one weird part of all the weird stuff that happens. That was the only one where I was just like, oh no, he didn't deserve that hug.
Yeah, and he didn't have any character, like
He didn't learn a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he might actually just go for the ruby again, for all we know,
Well,
because he found it once.
yes, he did find it once, but as we see Eugene has been drained of his power, we go back to the mansion and the power does flow into Cain, Juggernaut again.
And he's holding the ruby. I thought he was going to crush it, but he was like,
I don't know if he can. I
Yeah,
think
he might not.
because of Cyttorak and having the power come from it, even just as a conduit, I don't think he can physically destroy it.
yeah, that makes sense. But he says like he wants to make sure that no one like takes his power again, so he just like yeets it into space, which I was like,
He throws it into space the same way that like you see like Phoenix throw Gladiator into space.
yeah. So it's like, so that seems worse to me because you don't know where that is now.
Cain is not smart.
But he,
Everybody squares up. Like
Yeah.
Wolverine literally says, "Make your move."
yeah, and he's like, nah, not in the mood. And then he kind of does like he walks away in the sunset. I was half expecting the sad Hulk music, but it wasn't. And
I think it was because a different studio owned the rights to that music.
yeah, but also it was a different context. It wasn't like a sad scene necessarily. It was-
Well, now I want to see sad Hulk music again. Wolverine does the challenge, and he's like, "No, not today. When I'm in the mood." So he's still kind of like tough guy, alphas up, and is just like, "No, this is on my terms."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then he starts to walk away.
And Wolverine asks Xavier's like, should we do something? And Xavier's like, he decided not to continue the attack. I think that's his way of saying thank you. And I was like, I kind of get that, but also you should stab him in the back right now. Like,
I feel like Xavier would not be the one who just like literally was like, well, I have to understand him because Storm told me to, and she's obviously the smartest person here
Yeah.
when it comes to human interactions. Beast, brilliant, not great at human interactions, as we've seen from him making that woman feel very uncomfortable at the museum that one day. But yeah, it's like, I get why you guys are like, well, we can't contain him right now because then he's just going to destroy the whole mansion. But it's like, cool, the guy who wants to randomly show up and kill us, still out there.
yeah. That's why, even if it was just Wolverine, I've been like, I could just see him being like, fuck it.
Yes. But I think we've also established Wolverine by himself cannot take out the Juggernaut.
Yeah, totally.
So like
Yeah,
it's a
not really-
very abrupt ending to the episode. I think like we mentioned, like this was the same writer as the previous Juggernaut episode. And I feel like that episode also had a really, really quick resolution to it. So yeah, it's like, it's not that it's a bad episode. I mean, it's still a 7, but it's also, we just have this looming threat of this dude is going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, that always drives me crazy. And this happens a lot, so it happens like I'm crazy a lot. But that they just like let these people go, especially when they're within reach and they know that they're going to be a problem later for multiple people. What I did appreciate about this episode, it was a unique way of giving an origin story without telling us the origin story.
It's true. It was an origin story for one of the villains too, which we don't
Yeah.
often get.
Yeah, so because even maybe it's also because we're in 2022, it's like, we've all got origin story fatigue. So that's why, like, stuff like Spider-Man, Black Panther, the movies work, because they're like, we don't care, move on, and whatever origin stories you get are like bits and pieces of the current story happening. So I like that this was, even though it wasn't part of the bigger picture, we had to see this fun cutaway of like getting to see how you would be if you were a new Juggernaut without it being Cain.
Yeah.
And
you have the awkward nerd who just wants power because he thinks power will get him respect in women, as opposed to Cain, who I'm pretty sure like Cain went off to military school. He went to a boarding school and then he joined the military. So it was kind of like that natural progression.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but he also went there with a grudge. Yeah. So cool, goes to Asia to fight whatever, war is happening within the animated series and gets the power at that point. It all kind of makes sense. I also think what's weird is he's the older brother for Professor X. So if Cyclops is in his 20s, as we've established from the Orphan's End episode, that means Juggernaut has to be at least in his like 40s, because he has to be older than Professor X.
Yeah.
And we don't know how old Charles is. Charles isn't younger than 40 in my mind. He's absolute youngest is he's 41, 42 years old.
Because he's like a pretty well established in his adulthood when he's recruiting
exactly.
X-Men. So
so at least 10 years after he's recruited Scott, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's wild thing. So I guess the stone, the ruby, and the Cyttorak stuff like
keeps him younger because he is big and doofy as he is. He still looks very young.
Yeah,
so
he looks younger than Xavier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
It was fun episode. I don't know if you have fun Juggernaut stories that aren't the Juggernaut bitch thing. Like, leave them on our socials,
or leave the Juggernaut bitch thing in there and just hope that it doesn't get you banned from Instagram for saying bitch.
Right.
You're going to get the content warning of like, are you sure you want to say this? Many people get in trouble when they post this. And you have to decide, is it worth it to engage in a post? And the answer is probably no. Yeah. So just say Juggernaut meme and we'll know it's bitch.
There you go. Well, thank you for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram posts like the Juggernaut meme thing about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. I said that correctly this week. Yeah, I don't know. Don't be a douche, but go dance at a club. It's fun.